So when high school graduation is over, it's definitely time to ramp up kids' financial knowledge, bank accounts, credit, health insurance. Here with a financial checklist every young person needs as they're leaving home is certified financial planner Dana Twice. Good to see you.
Thank you, Margaret.
So, obviously we've probably talked to our kids about money as they're growing up, but then there's this big, I'm off to college or I'm off to the real world after high school. So what is it they need to know about budget and cash flow that they might not have gathered from what you've talked to them already about?
Well, they're going off to be more independent. Well, at least we think so. It depends
Yeah.
on if you're a helicopter parent or not, right? But they may be faced with choices that they just have always relied on you for a little bit of help with.
Yeah.
Or they've been so busy, they haven't spent any money, they've just been making money. Also, I think it's a new opportunity for peer pressure around financial spending in terms of what are your friends doing? What's your roommate doing?
Right.
Do folks
and
want
talking about that, what we can afford, what we can't afford. I mean, should you try to pencil out an actual budget before they are out the door?
I'm always a big fan of that. And it can just be on the back of a napkin. Maybe a cocktail napkin is too small for this purpose.
Also
Maybe
not age appropriate?
Well, oh yes, right. Oops. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of that because when you write it down, it cements it more in your brain.
Yes, that makes sense. Lots of kids are going on to, take out some loans for undergraduate school or maybe graduate school. So they're looking at loans, they're looking at grants, they're trying to sort of figure out how this is going to play out over the long term. What is our role as parents in helping that process?
I think one of the things you can do is to talk to them about what they're interested in doing. I've heard one rule of thumb is you should never borrow more than 1 year's worth of what you might make from your occupation.
Oh, that's a good rule of thumb.
That could work. At least that might put a little bit of a realistic lid on it.
Yeah.
The other thing about the loans is if you are co-signing a loan for them or you're taking out a loan on their behalf, I think it would be good to have a serious talk about this is what I'm paying for out of the loan and this is what I don't want you to spend the money on. As a colleague of mine used to say, beer and pizza is expensive. Sorry, not age appropriate.
Well, we'll be eventually. Yeah, during
beverages,
college.
and also beverages and pizza that you're paying off from 3 years ago is even more expensive.
Exactly. So be really explicit about what's involved and what's not involved. Credit. Okay. So here's what I noticed is that my child started getting credit card applications or you're pre-approved before he had a job. So it's pretty easy to get a credit card and get in trouble with that.
It really is. I know that there is a service called Pre-Screen Opt-Out. There's a website. You can get to it with a search engine search, or you can get to it through the Federal Trade Commission.
Okay.
You can opt out of all those solicitations for 5 years if you want to. That could get somebody through the average undergraduate career.
That's probably a really good idea, just so nobody's tempted. But you do need to sit down and talk about, do you need a credit card at college or in the world? How do you sort of go through that? Because you're probably, I'm guessing, going to have to help them a little bit.
Oh, yes, yes. So I think maybe discuss what the credit card is used for. If you get one that you're going to use online, perhaps set a lower limit than you might normally qualify for. Parents with good credit, maybe you don't want to give the child access to a $20,000 limit. So maybe you get a special card, they're an authorized user. And also, by the way, I run into many people who think that paying off their bill over time, paying interest, is the way to build your credit. Building your credit, it just means that you pay on time, mostly.
Okay.
You don't have to pay interest.
And it has to, tell us a little bit more about that. How do you build a credit score from the beginning?
Oh my goodness. Well, probably the first thing to do is to sit down with your young student who's about to fly and say, let's look at your credit score together. And they might say, oh, I didn't know I had a credit score. And that gives you an opportunity to explain how it impacts everything that they're going to do for the next umpteen years of their life.
Right.
But do that together. You can go to annualcreditreport.com. That's the only site authorized by the government. There are many services where you can sign up for a way to monitor your credit score every month.
Because they may not know that credit scores come into play when you interview for a job or as a proxy for all kinds of things over time.
Exactly. It really has an impact. And when you're 18, a bad credit experience that lasts 7 years is really a large part of your life.
The whole kind of launching period, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, the things you've mentioned, we will put online so people can read that a little bit more. What do we tell them about, now they've got credit cards and they've got, you know, lots of things that they're logging into that's important because they're at school or they're at work. What do we tell them about information security and data security?
Oh my goodness. Well, many of us, I won't tell you all my foibles, but a lot of us still fail at various
Right.
parts of that. The two best, most used passwords are still 1234556 and password, lowercase. So a
So
lot
just
of us
don't do that.
don't do that. There are password vaults that you can use. Some operating systems have them built in. Also, I found it useful to have a chat with my younger colleagues about what privacy means to them. And I think if you've grown up in the online world and the cell phone world, as many of them have, their definition of privacy, it might be a little bit different than those of us who maybe grew up in an analog world.
So is it important to at least say, listen, you've got more at risk now than you've ever had?
More at risk, the consequences will be longer, and if you're sharing any kind of financial accounts with them, really get down to say, look, this is my requirement for you on this.
Yeah, because it's your business too at that
Exactly.
point. All right, savings and investment. It may seem counterproductive if you, or counterintuitive rather, if you're taking out loans or getting grants, but there is a way to get started.
There is a way to get started. Everybody should think about having an emergency fund. Maybe the parent sets it up if you're able, or the child works on it, the young student. I always suggest the cost of a set of tires. That's something tangible people can
That's
relate to.
interesting. Okay, yeah.
$500, $1,000, also good. Then the other thing is to open a Roth IRA. That's the tax-free individual retirement account. They can earn money, and they can put money in up to $6,000 depending on what their wages are. So if they make $3,000, $3,000 can go into that. If that sits around for 40 years, it can help you be a millionaire.
No kidding. And it's a good place to put maybe gifts that come as cash gifts.
Absolutely. It is a great place to have as your treasure chest. People who save a little bit of money like that during college are well launched, partly due to compounding.
Exactly, which is always our friend. Let's talk about insurance. That can be a big question, especially with renter's insurance and things that maybe they've never even known existed.
Exactly. Also, car insurance, who's going to pay for it?
Yep.
What are the requirements? Parents, check your liability limits. The dorms, if they're living in the dorms or off campus, what is the requirement for where they live? On the dorm insurance, what does it really cover? You may still want to have extra coverage for our special beloved electronic devices.
Well, that's the thing. If you just add up what you've spent on a laptop and the phone and a few things like that, it's probably worth the fairly inexpensive coverage, right? It doesn't
It's very
cost much.
inexpensive, right? It could be, and renter's insurance could be, in the neighborhood of $10 or $20 a month.
That's well worth it to protect $8,000 worth of electronics.
Exactly.
Thank you so very much. That's a wonderful list, and we'll share that with people online so they can get ready to send those kids out into the big wide world.